Yeah, yeah. He came from somewhere back in long ago. The sentimental fool don't see, trying hard to recreate what had yet to be created. Once in her life, she musters a smile for his nostalgic tale. Never coming near what he wanted to say, only to realize it never really was. She had a place in his life, and he never made her think twice. As he rises to her apology, anybody else would surely know. Ooh, he's watching her go, but what a fool believes. He sees no wise man has the power to reason away what seems to be. It's always better than nothing.
Yeah. Welcome to my second video. You know, what was interesting about that first video was that I know it kind of went over, to me, it went over longer than it should have went. I didn't expect it to go as long as it did. You know, but, you know, I felt that it was necessary to kind of get a lot of things out in the first video. So I don't really have to go over a lot of these things moving forward in the future. To me, that's important. I just don't want to have to repeat myself, or, you know, I kind of want to put an end to that chapter of our life, not, you know, indefinite. You know, obviously I'm going to keep, you know, people up to date with what's going on, but I just don't want to make it something that I'm continuously talking about. You know, so I figured I'd get it out in my first few videos, you know, however long it takes. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy that, you know, we've went through all that. And like I said, I assure you, everything that I've spoken in that video is absolutely true. Like, I didn't exaggerate anything, you know, like all of it's real, you know. And I think if anything, I may have left a lot of stuff out, you know, because I just, you know, so much of it that I've forgotten, you know. But I thought about something afterwards, you know, in the last video when I spoke about what happened at the job I worked at with the contact dermatitis, when I went to the doctor and found out I'd been handling that toxic nickel. One thing I forgot to mention was that when I asked one of the employees what happened to the previous guy that worked my position, they told me that the guy got off work one day, went home and killed himself. You know, look, as crazy as that may sound, that is 100% true, you know. And, you know, of course, I mean, if that was true, because I don't even know if it was true. People, you know, these people play a lot of fear games and fear tactics and things like that. So, but if it was, you know, I imagined those people doing the exact same thing they did to him, to me, to him. Now imagine him constantly coming down with, you know, things on his body and things that he didn't know where it was coming from, and being told by the doctor, we don't know where it's coming from. The job isn't telling them, you know. And if, you know, to some people, something like that could drive a person insane. You know what I mean? Like, there are things that, you know, that not everybody has the same level of strength in different areas, mentally, you know, physically. And we all know where, we know that, and it's supposed to be that way, where one is weak, the other one's supposed to be strong. Someone may be smarter than the next. Someone may have more hands-on skills than the next. Someone may have more vocal skills than the next. Someone may have more caretaking skills than the next. You know, as a society, we're all supposed to, you know, be there for each other's weaknesses and each other's strength, because I don't care how strong you look, everybody has weaknesses, you know. So I kind of, you know, I felt bad for the guy. Like I said, if what they were telling me was true, it's a pretty sad story that, you know, the guy went home and did that to himself. you know. What else? There was something else so now I remember telling you guys about what happened with the hospital with my youngest baby. Now this is a crazy part that I left out. You know, I just, like I said, I didn't want to cram everything into one video, but during the time my wife was, I think it was after she had already given birth. I think our in-laws, her mother and father had came out to visit, and they would come and go, you know, and we were in the hospital. I was with my youngest, not the you know my third child, and we were getting. My wife and I were having a conversation in the hospital room, and I believe the conversation was kind of a family. It was surrounding family. You know, we were having a conversation, and I could see that there was someone at the base of the door. I could see a shadow at the bottom of the door, like someone was just hanging around the door. And I remember tapping my wife, saying, like, look over at the door, you know, like, you know, do you see that? Like somebody's at the door. And we could see someone at the door, you know, visibly we saw someone's shadow just hanging out at the door, you know, and we were at the very end of the NICU. So there wasn't any rooms to the right of us. You know, to the left of us was the long corridor hallway, nurses station where the nurses were. But to the right of us, there were no more rooms. I think there was a little seating area right there, and then an emergency exit that only staff could use for emergencies. So at one point, you know, I'm talking with my wife, and I decided to say, hey, you know, I said, well, let's, you know, me and my youngest were, you know, decided to go and grab some food from the cafeteria. She was hungry at that point. And, you know, we were getting ready to walk out the door. And as I was approaching the door, I looked down and I could see someone's shadow at the door. Again, still at the door. So by this point, I want to know who's standing at the door, you know, because now it's gotten weird. Like, you know, it's obviously someone's listening. And again, by this point, we had already realized we were being followed and surveilled. So it was obvious to us that people were doing it, but I didn't know the extent of it until this day. So when I opened the door with my little girl in hand, I opened the door, and whoever was at the door sprinted to the right. Now, remember, to the right of us was nothing but a little waiting area and an emergency exit. And they went out of the emergency exit. But when they went out of the emergency exit, all the alarms in the NICU went off. And anybody knows who've worked in a hospital that when the alarms go off in the NICU, they're always concerned about the babies being kidnapped and things like that. So obviously the nurses come running down, you know, and I'm standing in the middle of the hallway. And I actually, when it happened, because I wanted to know who it was, when I heard the emergency door fly open, you know, because there was a little, there was an area when they went out of the emergency door that was blocked. Like it kind of went into the, you know, it kind of went into the wall area. And then there was just a blind spot where I couldn't see that was, you know, down the hall, you know, a little to the right where it was kind of, the emergency exit was kind of out of sight where you couldn't really see, you know, anyone come in and out of it until you actually went around the corner and looked at it. You know, so when I heard the guy go out the door, whoever it was, I don't even know if it was a guy, I just assumed. When I heard the person go out the door, I walked with my little girl. We tried to scurry towards the door so we can see who it was. But by the time we got to the door, it was just slowly closing shut. So when we turned around, the nurses were rushing at me and looking at me, and I'm like, I don't know. And but believe it or not, had the nerve to ask me, did you do that? Did you set off the emergency, you know, alarm? And I'm looking at the nurses like, you know, why would I set off the emergency alarm? You know, like I'm the father, you know, my wife just had a baby, you know what I mean? But for whatever reason, you know, I don't know, they wanted to ask me what was going on, but I ended up going downstairs to the cafeteria anyway. When I went downstairs, the security guards, because they had came up and assessed the situation, then they came down and questioned me again, like, who was it? And I couldn't, I honestly, there was a part of me in my mind that's thinking like, there's no way this can be real. There's no way these people are questioning me with all the cameras. I'm hoping they got cameras. I don't know how the privacy things work in hospitals, but you know, that they're questioning me. What reason would I have to set off the emergency door? And I got my little, you know, 1-year-old with me, you know, and, you know, whatever. I don't even know if she was 1. I think she was like 10 months or something like that at the time. 11 months, you know, but yeah, they ended up questioning me. Security guard question being asked me, you know, what happened. I told them, I don't know. I said, I want you guys to find out just as much as I want you guys to find out as much as I do. I said, I saw someone lurking around our door. Somebody was there. I don't know who this person was, but someone was there. You know, so they end up coming, you know, I ended up going back up after I got my daughter a snack, and um the about an hour, I asked, as I was in passing, I asked the nurses, you know, just let me know whoever went, if they find out who it was, and they told me they would. About an hour later, you know, I think I was getting ready to leave at this point. It was right before I left. I just so happened to see one of the nurses, and I asked, like, who, can you tell me who did you guys find out who it was? And she actually says, yeah, you know, we actually did find out who it was. And I'm like, who was it? You know, and she brushed it off. You know what I mean? Like, she brushed it off like, oh, it was just it was just someone who had gotten lost. You know what I mean? It's no consideration of the fact that they had blamed me, you know. And like I said, when does that happen? Like, how often does it happen to where, you know, that happens in a hospital? But again, you know, these are the circumstances that seem to follow us, you know, post 2021, you know. You know, but again, a lot of the reason, one of the biggest reasons that I'm even talking about this, and like I said in my earlier videos, is because if any of you can understand going through this and trying to get people to understand what's happening in a world to where there are so many people who participate in this, and who are so many people who are bound by silence in this program, you know, I mean, it's hard to get people to understand. And there are situations, guys, to where there are people whose families are involved. Like, there are situations to where a person knows their family member, this is happening to them, and they are bound by such a gag contract. I have no idea how they convince people to do this to their own families, but they're bound by such strict rules and silence that they won't even let their own family know, like, this is what's going on. Like, literally, like, there are people who know their family members are going through this, and either they have been convinced, like the rest of the world, that their family member has done something to deserve this, and they are either getting incentives to keep their mouths closed, or they've participated in it with people who weren't their family members. And then once they realize a family member is involved, they sort of now have to navigate through this weird world of still being silent and not letting the family member they know, but also believing whatever lie they've been told about why this is happening to their family members. You know, but so I've you know, without saying too much, you know, if you had to ask me, you know, and I got to be honest, you have to ask me if I believe there's anyone in my own personal family who may be involved or be aware of this type of stuff, or what has happened to me and my family. You know, like I tell my wife, I'm going to tell you 100%. I do. I 100% do. You know, I'm not going to go naming any names or saying who I think it is, you know, in this video, but, you know, my wife knows who I think it is, you know, who I think may possibly have an idea of what's going on and are keeping their mouth silent, you know. But even then, the fact that they would even deny it to their own family members, to me, is just like a level of society that like I said, I just never knew existed. Like, I question my wife, how is it that I missed this? Like, how is it that this type of program passed me up all my life and it was never presented to me? Like, I guess maybe they knew, you know, that, you know, this dude right here, if we're not going to be able to get him involved in this because, you know, I don't know. Maybe they knew that I'd blow the lid off of it. I have no idea. But either way, my goal is just to make sure that people understand that it's real, you know. And to further back that, you know, I'm going to play a video right now of a young lady who had filed a complaint against a teacher at a school, right? And I want you guys to listen to what she said happened to her after she filed that complaint. And then I'll kind of connect where my situation falls in line with what she did and then what transpired afterwards. So take a look at this video, and, you know, I'll be back to give my own personal commentary on the video.
I was attending Texas State University, and I reported a professor that was displaying very inappropriate behavior towards me and another student in his class. After reporting him, making the initial report with the dean, a few of my other professors went into the grade system and started to drop my grades as if an indirect threat that if I were to go through with the official report, that they would do something to my grades for that semester. After that, I was viciously bullied by the staff at the school, and that's when the police stalking and harassment began. The police in the town of San Marcos would tailgate me, not stop me, follow me all around the town. If they were not following me, they would be posted outside of the establishment where I was. This scared me so much.
Okay, so as you guys heard, after she files the complaint, this is when, things start happening, and the question, and now I'm going to play the rest of the video, but the thing that blows my mind is, who is this teacher? Who is this professor, as she put it? And what kind of connections did he have that would enable, and that an entire police force would get together and do this young lady like that? You know what I mean? Like, imagine you're someone's daughters out there, or someone's family member making a complaint against a teacher who made some type of unwanted pass at her, right? And then after she does that, some type of connections that this teacher either has with the city or society or I have no idea what to call it, but whatever connections this professor has, it initiates what happens next, where the school starts to harass her, horribly, as she put it. She's followed everywhere by local law enforcement. Like, what in the world? Like, who is this guy, and what kind of program allows this type of stuff to happen to a young lady, all because she filed a complaint against a teacher? So listen to the other half of the video, and I'll come back again and we'll go from there. But it's pretty mind-blowing to hear what happened to this young lady.
I've seen so many things in the media regarding the police and what they're capable of that I decided to move out of the town of San Marcos to Houston. After moving to Houston, the same occurrences followed me there. I even tried moving out of the state. That led to no avail as well. The police proceeded to do the same thing in LA.
Okay, so again, look how far it followed her. Look how far this followed this girl. I mean, look, this young lady moved from 3 different states, and this followed her. Now, let's go back to what I was speaking in my video, and the things I explained that's happened to me and my wife and my family. Okay, so she initiated. It seems as if the harassment started after she filed a complaint against a teacher, right? So I had to look into my life and question: have you had any battles with anyone that may have initiated something like this? And I don't know. Like I said, I had a civil case with the FedEx Corporation that started in 2021. And around that exact same time, I also had a fight with the Peoria Municipal Court in Peoria, Arizona, that I ended up escalating to the Supreme Court, where I said the police officers had lied, and one of the officers that came up to my job, and I even filed a complaint against the judge, for allowing what happened to have happened. So I was really targeting some pretty, some people in the city. You know how people feel about police officers and judges. They hold them with the highest, how most people, feel about them, in most cases. I'm not going to say everybody, because there's a lot of people out there who are clearly know that they're no better than any other human being in the world. In fact, they can be some of the most corrupt people in the world. And I'm not saying they're all of them. I don't believe all police officers or all judges are corrupt. I've actually seen a lot of them who do, I believe have good hearts, even if it's far and a few. But I've seen probably more good-hearted, judges than I've seen police officers. And that's just in my own personal experience. I don't know about anybody else's experience. I know there are people out there who may have, police officers and their families and things like that. So I'm not trying to, stir any pots or anything like that. I am just speaking on my own personal experience, but I did have those issues, and just so happened, there was also some family issues going on with my wife, and with family and things like that. But around the same time, all of this was going on. And it seemed to all start. Now, I had to go back and actually look at when I can remember these details actually starting. Like when I remember that, Thanos snap and our whole world changed. And I actually do remember I can narrow it down to the week that I believe it started. And it was somewhere a little before I told you guys in the last video where me and my children would follow. And the lady said she worked for the, fire department. But again, I filed complaints against people, and then this followed, and it was devastating, man. Like I said, and then when we realized that we were going to other states and this stuff was following us to other states, like that really blew my mind. I'm like, these people are following us throughout the country, man. Like, you get no rest from these people, no rest at all. They invade every aspect of your life that you could possibly imagine. And if you think they're not invading that part of your life, think again. It's so invasive to where, again, most people, if they're not going through this, the first thing they're going to say is there's no way it can be that bad. But it is. But it's that bad. It's that bad, but anyway, this young lady and what you heard in her story, it just sort of backs what I've been telling you guys. Like there's proof that this is out there, and and like I said, it throws me off at times when people don't believe it. But again, like I said, I can understand. So this is why I submit these types of videos, so you can see that, hey, I'm not making this up. This is something I'm pulling out so I can get, sympathy from people or anything like that. Like, this stuff is happening. This is happening, So I have another video I'm going to show you guys. And this is a whistleblower. And he, let me see if I can get the guy's name. Okay, so this guy, his name is Richard Lighthouse. He was a NASA whistleblower. So just listen to what he had to say. Now, this is another thing. Now, I'm giving you guys credible people. You can look these people up on Wikipedia. These people had, careers, and they were well respected. I mean, these people are people who were, that were involved in some of the highest parts of our society, where they decided to do the right thing, and this was the outcome of their life. So just listen to what he had to say about what he's went through, and I'll be back and we'll sort of get some commentary on that as well. It's pretty wild, that even people of this man's stature has had to go through stuff like this. So just check this out. I'll be right back.
There's basically an experiment, a very, very grisly experiment. Unfortunately, there are elements within our government, which we refer to as the deep state, that are very corrupted, unfortunately. And these groups are going to extremes to try to silence criticism of certain government programs and certain government efforts. And we've documented a lot of that on our website. So among our more than 3,000 members are people that are harassed with what we call gang stalking. What that means is fusion centers all over the United States, and there are fusion centers in Europe and Asia as well, that are organizing and directing harassment of citizens. Many of these people are political activists. In my case, I'm a government whistleblower. That's the reason that I believe I was targeted. And sometimes random people are chosen. And unfortunately, it can be so disturbing for these people that some of them end up committing suicide.
Okay, so in his opinion, it's an experiment done on people. It's an experiment, and I don't know if I'm kind of skeptical of if it's an experiment more than it is people just trying to silence people who talk. Because again, when I was fighting my court cases, I studied a lot. I studied law a lot, and I studied it mostly in the area in which I was fighting. I was fighting a misdemeanor, so most of it was criminal law. But anybody who knows that when you start learning law, and I'm not even a law student, but I was told after I got done, with these cases and they started going up to the higher courts, I had an attorney look at, one of my motions, and She blatantly said, "There's nothing I can do that you haven't already done." And actually, she asked me if I'd consider becoming a paralegal. I found that quite interesting. But you know, when you're fighting these types of cases, you start to realize things about the law. And I learned a lot about the law. Like there's a lot of things that I learned that I didn't expect to even learn. And I personally believe what ended up happening is that my knowledge became a threat to them, because this is a young man who's been arrested before in his time for driving on suspended licenses, driving, just other stupid stuff, misdemeanor things that I've been arrested for. And now I've gotten the knowledge, to fight certain things. And now, of course, I'm not fighting things that I'm wrong for. If I'm wrong, it is what it is. We pay the fine, do the time, it is what it is. But if I'm not wrong and I'm being wronged, what do you expect me to do? Like, it's like these court systems, they're so cocky and arrogant that because they want to be right, or because it's a money system where there's money involved in this, they expect you as a black man to just take whatever it is they dish out. And if you don't have money for a lawyer, especially if you're poor and you don't have money for a lawyer or anybody who's going to actually take the time to defend you and look into your case, they expect you to just give up and take a plea deal. Or they'll throw you some public defender who is obviously an officer of the state. So now you have an officer of the state who's the public defender. You have a judge who's an officer of the state, who's the judge overseeing the case. And then if you got police officers coming to the court trial, testifying, then they're also officers of the state. So how do you get these three buddies in the same room together against you, and you trust this public defender that they've gotten when they go back in the judge's chambers and kumbaya and have their little moments and laughter? It's like it's honestly, if I was from another world and I came down and I explained this and somebody explained this to me, I would think people were insane. I would think human beings are insane. Just the things they do, but whatever in the case. But I learned a lot in law during that time. And I believe that's personally what made me a target. The fact that he knows things, that's one of the things I believe, but I also believe other things as well. But I'm not going to talk about that right now. Those are things that we're going to wait and let, God reveal later on in life. But again, he believes this is an experiment. And one of the things he also said was that, he also, he knows that this has driven people to suicide. And I spoke about that in my first video. I know that it's driven people to more than just suicide. Like, people have been driven mad doing this type of stuff. What else? So I'm going to show you another person as well. I'm going to show another video. And like I said, I'm giving you guys credible people. Now, if you guys do a Google on this lady, her name is Karen Stewart. She's an ex-NSA analyst. And she also went whistleblower. Just so happened, people who tell the truth, She gets more into detail about what she knows is going on. And this woman is coming from she knows what's going on. Anybody who knows work for NSA, you can imagine that they have inside knowledge about how this stuff works. And they probably still have connections even after she left that could feed her, correct information or insider knowledge to give her an idea as to who is behind this and how this goes. Take a listen to what she has to say.
And then they would surveil the person to death. All you needed, according to Barack Obama in 2013, was two people saying that you were a this or that. You're a bank robber, you're whatever. All you needed was two people to say that and swear to it. There was no proof necessary. There was no finding out if those people perhaps had an ulterior motive. Did they have a grudge? Once you ask the Fusion Center to target someone, they put in a request to the main Fusion Center, which I'm not sure which one that is. It could very well be the DC one, but I'm not sure. But you can put in a request for a false dossier to be written up on the person and given to the Fusion Center nearest that person. They take it to their civilian vigilantes, InfraGard and others, and they take it to them and say, okay, this is a person we're going to be stalking and harassing 24/7. This is the supposed crime. So they have a never-ending investigation, which actually includes not only 24/7 harassment, but it can include slitting your tires, arranging car accidents, murdering or stealing your pets, sabotaging your car so that you have to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars on car repair, going to your job and telling your boss that you're a horrible person, he needs to fire you.
Now, as you heard her say, now she believes, and I've heard this before, I've heard this from a lot of other people, she believes fusion centers are involved. When I looked into fusion centers and how they operate, it's plausible. You know what I mean? Like when you think about it, I mean, if you know anything about them, who has the ability to monitor someone throughout the entire country? Who has a database that can be fed to another state in a matter of seconds? Who has a file or dossier that can be fed to another state in a matter of seconds all over the country? You know, so you have to ask, you know, there is no other way that I can think of that you can be tailed down to the very street in the corner that you're parked at, or you parked in an entirely different state opposite of where your harassment started. You know, that's the only other, you know, it makes sense. Like I said, there's no verified evidence that that's how it works, but based on my knowledge and based on my research, it's highly plausible, highly plausible. Here's another video, and this is a gentleman who also talked about how he was surveilled and harassed by the police and his neighbors and his community. You know, just more evidence that this stuff goes on. Take a look.
I was being harassed by the police department along with noise campaign. I mean, for a whole year, every time I left my house, I was bombarded with noise, which led me to have a psychological breakdown. I've been job mobbed. I've been put into what I call a assassination type program. Okay. I have been villainized.
I mean, what do you say to that? You know what I mean? Do you deny that? Like, who looks at that and says, oh, those people are crazy? You know, who looks at these people in these high positions? Oh, they're crazy. Yeah, right. I mean, if a person will look at these people and say they're crazy and just, you know, and dismiss everything they're saying, that's the kind of person I don't want to be around. You're a dangerous person because obviously you're not firing on all cylinders to even think like that. And that's just the way I see it, man. Like I might want to tread lightly around a person who can hear that and be in complete denial that even exists, or that a person that's saying it's happening to them is not happening. You know, it's just, I've learned that people who are strongly denying or creating all these other ridiculous possibilities, or trying to persuade you from getting an understanding of what you know to be true, that can be some very strong, powerful manipulation. And I tell people, just be careful of that, because this program has been around for quite a long time, and people have learned how to really get around and get over on people. So just people are, it's crazy. It's crazy. That's all I have to say about that. And here's one more video. This is another lady. She's speaking as well about the Bill of Rights and how it's been shredded, as we all know. But she just provides a little bit more insight as to, you know, how these programs operate. So take a listen.
The United States government and what it will do to people who exercise their rights according to the Bill of Rights that we all are supposed to have. We don't have it anymore because, of course, the War of Terror has shredded the Bill of Rights. So what we have come to see and experience generation after generation now is abuse of authority, such that today we have agents who represent the government, and that government is out of control.
You know, so, I mean, how much more can I show you guys? You know, I mean, this is, I really don't know what else to show. You know, I mean, I really don't know how much proof to provide to show you guys that this is happening, you know. And in the beginning of the video, you know, the reason I focused on what fools believe is that, you know, people will believe whatever they're told to believe if it's coming from a source or an agency that they're told to respect or they've been led to respect. Even if that agency has went rogue and has been corrupted from the core, people will still believe it. Or they will pretend to believe it for the benefit that it provides, for the benefit that that belief provides. And there's a lot of people out there who are just ungodly, and they'll do it even if they don't see anything in the person that they're being told. They'll do it because, hey, I was told to follow this guy to a restaurant and I got a free meal. I was told to trail this guy for the next 50 miles and I got free gas. I was told to do this, or because I got, he said they'll give me a free apartment if I move next to him, and I'm just nosy all the time and I use this device. I mean, it is absolutely insane, and the amount of intrusion that comes with this type of surveillance is beyond anything I would have ever imagined. It's beyond anything I would ever imagine. Now, I'm not going to get into everything else. My next video, which I deem will be my last video, where I'm going to really focus on this. But I'm going to get a bit more into that surveillance and just how much this program will invade a person's life to destroy them and to break their spirits. And I got receipts. That's the good part about it. I'm not just coming with you guys with my own personal opinions. I can actually prove down to the tech what these people are doing and what they're using and how they're violating human rights on a level that's so gross and so vile. It's almost hard to believe. It's disturbing, to say the least. It's disturbing. And we'll also get into some other things that really tore me internally apart when I realized that other agencies or organizations were also taking part in this. It's been one wild ride. Again, it's by the grace of God, we've been able to stay strong. It does still occur now. We're still attacked in our home. We're still attacked with frequency weapons in our home. Our neighbor below us, I'm not going to give you guys any addresses because I don't want people to know my address, but we have neighbors planted to the left of us, to the right of us, and below us. And they listen to me, these people spend their entire days listening and attacking my family in any way that can disturb our peace. I mean, they spend hours upon hours listening. I know I have certain devices that can pick up certain frequencies, and I'm telling you, it's crazy that human beings will invest so much of their life to do this to people and even walk out the door the next day like they're sane. And I hate to say that, man, because I don't want people to think that I'm insulting them, but we have to look at it for what it is. It's insanity for anyone to even pay me to spend 24 hours of my day, 7 days a week, listening with devices through walls and listening to what people are talking about so I can predict their next moves, so I can listen to where they're going next, so I can give hints to people out in public to throw this in passing so they can believe that someone's listening to them at home, because that's what they do. By the way, they listen to things and they'll get with their community buddies and they'll send text messages or send things to people in grocery stores or things in passing that people have a good conversation with you, and then throw in that conversation something that you just talked about with your wife in the privacy of your own home, or something you Googled on the internet, just to let you know we are watching you. And people will look you in the face with a straight face like they're good, grounded, moral people and do this to you. And they'll do it repetitively. So secretly, it's going on, but you can't say nothing about it. And that's where they get you, the plausible deniability. They know it's going on, but they can't say nothing about it, but you can't pinpoint it. It's like the guy said in the last video, people are following me. Well, who's following you? People with dealer tags. Well, everybody has dealer tags. What are they driving? They're driving different cars. And then quickly, when you try to explain this type of stuff, you realize, okay, it sounds a little crazy, but you're not lying. You're telling the truth. So you have to be very specific and very covert with how you approach these people, because they think this program that they're involved in is so well-rounded and so polished that it can't be broken. And this is why I love the God we serve, because he has a way of showing human beings that not only am I going to break it, I'm going to expose every single person who took part in it and got any compensation out of doing it. It's been done. And it's weird that humans don't see that. Like throughout history, God has destroyed nations. He has destroyed the rich. All of these people who pass through earth, have passed through life. They come into life as a baby, they grow up and they go old. We all grow old. And then the next generation comes along, and then you realize we're all just passing through. We all are just passing through, but people are being allowing the government and these organizations to snatch them up and use the small vapor of a life they have for their agenda, to target people that they feel are a threat, that people who expose the truth, and human beings being so weak in their hearts or so wanting to be a part of things will take part in this madness. They will train their kids to do it. Before I go, another crazy story. This one just popped in my head. So this is when, after my kids and my family and I had discovered what was happening in Arizona. One day, my two daughters, we were driving through Arizona. We were in Phoenix, and we're approaching a green light. And as we're approaching a green light with the right of way, a couple walks across the street on a green light. Now, we're on a major street. They didn't just walk across the street. They shuffled their two small kids in front of them. And I'm going to say, just by looking at the sizes of the kids, there may have been a 2-year-old girl and maybe a 6-year-old boy. They shuffled their kids in the front of them. I could not believe what I saw. And it shocked me to the point I let my window down and I told the guy, I said, bro, you got to be more careful, man. Like, that was one of the most irresponsible things. And this dude proceeded to curse me out like a dog in front of his children after he had just tossed him in the middle of traffic. And he cursed me out in front of his girl and his children and his wife and in front of my kids. And, I was just like, whatever, I moved on. I didn't want my kids to see, me, go off on this guy. But this is what the guy did with his children. And it was when I first realized that these people will actually use their kids in this program. And once I realized that, I was able to see when I would go out and about in other places where the kids were being told to participate and were playing their roles. And if you guys look at any of these people who have went through this, they'll tell you the exact same things. These people raise their kids in this. And a lot of them are your average everyday boat trip taken on the weekends, F-150 driving Americans who are pulling up the church, every Sunday, listening to the rock bands. Like, it is astounding. It's astounding, the depravity of the human heart in 2026. I say this. If someone were to approach me with a program like this and tell me that this person is a threat to your community, this is what I want you to do. I'm going to pray for that person and ask them to politely get out of my face. Because obviously off the bat, something isn't right. Are you investigating the person? Or let's say this. I'm going to play the devil's advocate at this point. I don't like saying that because there's nothing I want to do with the devil, but I'm going to use that terminology for this moment. Let's just say they told you that, hey, this person is a threat, and you believed it. But then you see that a year later, 2 to 3 years later, this person hasn't done a darn thing. They're walking around town, they're with their family, they're trying to raise the kids, and you're actually seeing the damage this is causing them, yet there's no investigation. Nothing fruitful has come of this story that you've been given 2 years ago or 3 years ago. It's at that point that, as a human being, I would have to say, I'm out of this. Like, I'm not taking part in anything that's doing this. I feel like I've been lied to. And if you haven't gotten anything out of this in this amount of time, and you're expecting me to continue to do this to this family, there's no way my heart can do that. But that's just me. So then I question, who are these people that hearts aren't thinking like that? Like, what kind of human being sits and gets an enjoyment out of, even if you're getting paid, gets an enjoyment out of spending the time you have here? And I like to say, the vapor of a time you have in this life, doing this to other human beings, tricking yourself into believing there's a righteous reason for doing this, even when all the signs are pointing to no, it's not. It blows my mind. Either way, I think the next video, like I said, I'm going to really try to make the next video my last video where I really dig into this as far as I have. That's why I try to get as much out as I can, because like I said, I want to move on from this and I want to move on to other stuff. There's a lot of other stuff going on. But this is happening, guys. This is happening. You know, all kinds of weird things are happening, you know, to my family that I just can't explain. But here I am on this YouTube channel, right in front of you, front and center, by the grace of God. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for today. Look forward to my next video. Again, if you guys like any of the content that you guys are seeing, please subscribe. You know, I mean, honestly, it's the only way that, you know, it's going to, you know, get this message out there. And also, like I said, we're a family coming out of homelessness behind this stuff. And this will greatly help us build our legacy, build our ministry, and move and get to a point to where hopefully one day we can be in a place to where these people can't at least financially tear us down. You know, because if they can ruin your jobs, they can try to destroy your happiness, they can try to destroy your pride. But, you know, where there's support, it's very hard for these people to try to tear you down in that manner. You know, so this channel for me and my family is a lifeline. It's something I've always wanted to do, but it's also something that I am taking on as as a purpose, you know, because I've always felt that this is where God was leading me and this is what he was leading me to do. You know, and I've been told that as well. You know, we had one lady years ago who told us when it first started that her words were, they're trying to stop your ministry. And this was from someone that we deeply believe was in the know, because she worked for the government, you know, and that's what she told us. They're trying to stop your ministry, you know. So again, as I've explained, I don't know where this will go, you know, as far as what's going to happen to our family next, but I do know I'm going to stand strong in what I'm doing right now. And again, it's not going to be where I'm going to be speaking about this all the time. This will end at some point, even if it still continues, because I do want to move on to other things. But I felt that it's only right to let people know what we've been going through, what we've struggled through, where I've been over the last 5 years, you know, why I started this channel in 2021 and then just, you know, ghosted everyone, and, you know, how hard this has been for us, you know. Again, if I had done anything, guys, to deserve this, legally or criminally, I would totally allow an investigation. I would totally say, hey, you know what, you know, I did that. You know, if they presented me and said, this is what we saw. And I'm not saying I've done anything. I'm just speaking in realistic terms. If there was anything I've done, let's say I cheated on taxes. I haven't done that. I've never done that because someone always does them for me. But I'm using that as an example. Let's say I cheated on taxes and the government found out 6 years later and came at me like, hey, we see here, can you explain this, that you cheated on your taxes, blah, blah, blah. I would say, you know what? Yeah, I did that back then. The family and I were going through some tough times, and, you know, whatever the penalties may be, I'll be willing, you know, to deal with those penalties. But that's not what's happening. That's not what they're doing. Which is obviously clear that that's because that didn't happen. What they're doing is trying to shut me up. And what's sad is society helps them, because this program, this system would not be successful if it wasn't for your neighbors and your communities out there participating in this. God bless you guys. Until the next video, peace.